Hello and welcome. Today we're in the upcoming Tier 9 Dutch destroyer, the Friesland. And she is a work in progress still, meaning that she is subject to change, and I do have some gripes with her, which I will get into later. At the end of the video, about 5 minutes from the end, I will have the port of the ship where I go over the stats that you can see and what kind of commander skills and upgrades I use. So in a match like this with no CV, one thing, this ship is basically a support destroyer, supposed to be. As you can see, she doesn't have any torpedoes. What she does have though is very strong anti-air. However, this match does not have any CVs, so the anti-air is kinda wasted. So in a match like this, the Friesland is supposed to be, or at least I think, is supposed to be like an anti-destroyer. Now, she doesn't have great concealment. It's okay, but not great. Remember though, she is tier 9, not tier 10. But her concealment is 6.4 kilometers with all the bells and whistles that you would expect. So we're still dealing with 100 meters worse than, say, a Harugumo. But on the other hand, and a kilometer worse than certain other destroyers. But on the other hand, she has very good DPM. She has, I think, the highest DPM of all the tier 9 destroyers, because she only has 4 guns, 2 at the front, 2 at the rear, but she has very fast reload, like really fast. I think this is the quickest reload in the entire game on everything. We're talking like 1.6 seconds with the build I'm doing with right now, without the adrenaline rush kicking in. So she can actually output quite a bit of DPM, although of course if you run into a French destroyer with reload booster up, that is going to eclipse what the Friesland can put out, but not quite, What the French destroyers can do isn't quite sustained. These shells also have a fairly high fire chance. With my Demolition Expert build, I actually have a 10% fire chance, so you'd have 8% on most other builds. Which means that you can set a reasonable amount of fires on lots of ships. Another thing is that on the ship I don't recommend double tapping, just hold down the button, because right now I'm holding down the button, I think, or maybe not. I actually think it's faster than double tapping, because there always seems to be some kind of a delay when you double tap, and when you hold it down I think the delay is lessened. Now, as I said, in a match like this, especially with 4 destroyers, and considering we've lost 2, so it's just up to me and our other DD left to contend with all 4 of the enemy team, I have to basically deal with enemy destroyers. Now, I can't go head-on fight almost any of the DDs because they just have a better concealment, and there are other ships here who will ruin my day, although the same would apply to the enemy DDs. But since there's more of them, I think I would be taking a bigger risk than they are. So the better idea is to just sit back and try to get them to push into us, because, hey, we have 2 of the 3 cap zones, so they need to do something. And considering we're actually behind in terms of ships, I think that's a good idea to go with. Her smoke is really good. It is kind of like US smoke, so it's really good. And the hydro is actually German hydro, but remember she's tier 9, so the hydro range is 5 kilometers rather than the 5.9 that the Z52 has. So it's not quite, comparable. Something I've noticed is that many people, me included, when talking about the ship actually seem to often compare it to tier 10 ships. That isn't quite appropriate, but I think on the other hand maybe it is. Because, well, you're often gonna be in tier 10 battles and you can't do quite the same things many other destroyers can. This is one of my biggest gripes with this DD. She doesn't fulfill the same role as other DDs do, which is, well, you can't go and flank and torpedo ships. You have to rely on your guns only. You can't even use your, you can't even YOLO into a destroyer around the corner, or battleship around the corner or anything, because again you don't have any torpedoes, so you can't make it dangerous to the enemy ship. And as a result, this this type of DD is played at range. Now, it's not as big of a problem in a match like this, since we started out with 4 DDs, so we actually got some destroyer action by the other DDs, so you could play this DD as a gunboat, but in a match where you're the only destroyer, I've found there to be quite a few problems, because, again, you just can't go around and try to torpedo battleships, and battleships just aren't going to be that afraid of you, especially once they learn more about your ship. Because right now, you know, there's still a good chance that the enemy battleships might think I have torpedoes. But I think as the game goes on, they'll recognize the shellfire pattern and then realize that, hey, that smokescreen doesn't have any torpedoes, so we can just push into it, and there's nothing that smoke can do to us other than the HE spam. But the HE spam is quite dangerous, not so much to the battleships, the fires are annoying, but the damage output is negligible. But against destroyers and light cruisers, this HE spam is does quite a bit of damage. Okay, in terms of the match itself so far, it seems we're in an okay position. They are taking the A cap, and I don't see us being able to hold it. But on the other hand, we firmly hold the C cap, and we've done quite a bit of damage to enemy destroyers. I think this is the black using radar, so I need to disengage and try to get further away. Because, well, they are gonna target me, if they can, since I'm the only DD on the enemy team on the side, and once they take out me, well, other than the Seattle, they basically have free reign here on the battleships on my team, so I am a rather vital target for them. But luckily actually I don't think I got out of the range of the radar, it's just that the radar ran out. So I disengaged, but I still have a fair bit of HP left, and I'm looking at the minimap at this moment, and as a destroyer such as this, I can basically 1v1 any of the DDs, and that Jutland only has 4000 HP. I could probably even take 2 of them at the same time and be fine, because they simply don't have the HP, and my DPM is pretty good. The maneuverability on this DD is okay. It's not great, but that isn't bad either. The speed is also fine, but you don't have any speed boost, so that is something to consider. Actually, I'm using the rudder shift upgrade, but now that I think about it slightly more, I think it might be better to go with the acceleration upgrade, because, well, on most DDs, going with rudder shift is okay if you really want it, because you have a speed boost, and speed boost helps you accelerate so much faster. But this ship doesn't have it, so that is a downside. And goodbye, Akatsuki. Okay, next target, Jutland, although she is quite far, so this is going to be difficult to hit. But being able to dodge these torpedoes is quite okay. She isn't all that special in that regard compared to other DDs. Oh wow, all the enemy DDs on this side are actually fairly low. So I think we're pretty good right now, since we'll probably deal with the black at some point, and then there's just the Jutland to go, and it'll be fine. I mean, there's only like 1 overpen from the Bismarck, and the black is almost dead, if not already dead, considering she got hit a few more times. But right now the focus is on the middle bit. Now, as I said, that I think Friesland can't really fulfill quite the same roles as you expect from a destroyer, and I think that's a shame. And one of the problems is the concealment, which you are going to soon see, because I'm advancing on the position of this Jutland. I'm spotted right now, and it took me it took me some time to get there. I think this Jutland doesn't actually have concealment expert or the upgrade, because she should have been spotted later, and there should have been a bigger gap. But luckily she didn't seem to, because a Jutland without concealment expert should have better concealment than the Friesland with everything, in terms of, that the concealment has, or at least the numbers are very, very close. So she should have had a bigger gap. The firing angles on the guns are also pretty good, so there's that at least. But yeah, the concealment plus the lack of torpedoes kind of makes me hesitant to play this ship at times, because it just feels that your hands are tied. Later on, I'll post another video where you'll see. That one will have a CV as well, where you can see how my hands are tied, how I just can't do the things I'd like to do. If I were in any other destroyer, I could have done some more, but as a Friesland, I just couldn't. But in this match though, it's not the case, because I can just DPM the ships down and they only have one battleship left, so... And because I have IFHE, I actually have a good chance of dealing quite a bit of damage to the cruisers, except the Buffalo, because the guns in this ship are 120mm, so even with IFHE the pen is only 26mm rather than 27, so I actually cannot really engage the Buffalo, other than superstructure or AP. I can't really say too much about the AP on the ship because I haven't really used it that much. Maybe the AP is pretty good, but I kinda doubt it makes up for it. Now, one ship to really look out for when you play the ship is a Daring. Yeah, she is a tier higher, but the Daring can cause a lot of trouble for you, because she has comparable or better DPM. I think it's better actually, plus she has a heal, and yeah, Daring's concealment is also pretty good, so when you run into a Daring head first, you're gonna have a bad time. Probably a worse time than against, say, a Harugumo, because Daring also has a Hydro which you could technically use against you. There's the Buffalo. Fire AP at her, because, again, my HE can't pen her hull, but man, I missed most of the shells, so I swapped to HE, since she angled towards me. But she went down, her Bismarck is going to go down soon as well, so it's just the Ibuki and the Black left, so we pretty much have this in the bag. Especially since we are holding the B-cap as well, so they're gonna have some trouble. Overall, I don't really like the Friesland that much. I'm sure she's gonna be great at what she does, but I kinda feel like she should get better concealment. Not by much, maybe 100-200 meters, but slightly better concealment. Or perhaps the IFHE change is going to change things for the ship, I don't know. But so far at least, I find her to be slightly lacking. It's not a destroyer I really enjoy playing, and I think the biggest issue is that if you play this DD, and you're the only destroyer on your team, and the enemy team gets, well, a proper destroyer, say Yugumo, I think you're gonna be in trouble, because the Yugumo has such a better concealment range than you do, that she's able to just capitalize on it by just playing around with it. She's not gonna engage you directly, but you obviously have to be afraid of her torpedoes, which is not that big of a deal since you have a Hydro. But the Yugumo can just go and torpedo your ship. She can go flank your battleships and do massive damage if they aren't paying attention. And she can also outspot you, meaning that she can contest your caps without actually engaging you proper, and just having her teammates do the work. Whereas the Friesland just can't do the things. Now, the Friesland has very good anti-air, and it is very effective. The problem is you're still a destroyer, so if you turn your anti-air on, it takes time to shoot down the planes, and during that time, there will be enemies that do hit you. And you also can't do very dangerous things, because, well, if your smoke is on cooldown, or if you have put the smoke but you had to disengage and run further away, if the CV knows roughly where you are, they can just come spot you and keep spotting you over and over. They might not deal that much damage to you, but the other ships will. Anyways, this game I sank 3 ships, did 95k damage, got almost 2200 base XP. That's because I mostly fought DDs and I took one whole cap and then a whole bunch on top of it. I mean, I have 88 of the 180 capture points on our team. Plus I defended the cap, and here you can see that all the 3 ships I sunk were actually DDs. And I did deal significant damage on all 4 destroyers. Yeah, I would say fires are pretty good in the ship. The guns are pretty decent, but I find her to just kinda reminds me of playing a Khabarovsk, where if you're the only destroyer, it's kind of a detriment to the team. So, let's take a look at the Friesland in port, and I have to say that this destroyer looks really good. Although, I suppose I say this almost on all the ships that I take a look at, but perhaps the ships just do look good. Anyways, let's take a look at first the commander skills and upgrades, so you know what I'm dealing with. I went with a priority target as usual, last stand, survivability expert, concealment expert, IFHE, because you don't have any torpedoes, so getting the better HE penetration is better because these are 120mm guns, so divided by 6, that's 20mm of pen. With IFHE, it's 26, so you can actually pen the 25mm of armor that many ships do have. Then I went with Demolition Expert and Adrenaline Rush. One of the build I have heard is you drop these two, I guess, Demolition Expert and Adrenaline Rush, and take AFT, because you can fire further, and since you don't have torpedoes if you play as a gunboat at range, perhaps that'll work. I haven't really tried it. In terms of upgrades, I go with Maynard's Modification 1, the Hydroacoustic Special upgrade, then anti-air guns, because the other three don't really matter and the ship is good at anti-air, so buffing it further is good. Then I go with rudder shift because with this upgrade is 3.2 seconds. That would be okay, but without it I prefer this over the propulsion one, but I think both are fine. And then I go with concealment, obviously, since we're dealing with the destroyer, and the last slot is main battery modification 3 for the better reload. The traverse change doesn't matter. You could also go range here as well, but I decided not to. The consumables she has is a standard damage control party, 40-second cooldown or reload, and 5-second duration. 3 smoke generators that last for 127 seconds, and the active time is 30 seconds, so actually you get a total of 157 seconds of consumable time, but obviously you still have like a 30 or 25-second gap between the consumable being up again and how long it lasts. I suppose if you take a different commander skill, the gap will be smaller. The smoke is really good on the ship. Then you have defensive fire, although I think the defensive fire is being nerfed slightly. Doesn't really matter too much, but whatever. And in the last slot you get German Hydro with 5 kilometer detection range. And keep in mind it's a tier 9 destroyer, so it's 5 kilometers, not 5.8 or 5.9 what it is on the Z52. This Hydro is also really good. So with that said, let's take a look at the stats. So it's a survivability expert, 20,750 HP for a tier 9 DD. That's pretty good. Not the greatest, but decent enough. It's not a big disadvantage. As it is in some other DDs. Main battery reload, 1.6 seconds. 1.6 seconds. Oh yeah, one other thing you could do is you could also slot in basic firing training for the 10% better DPM. I went with Demolition Expert because 2% fire chance is actually maybe not that great, but 8% to 10% is that's 25% more fires, so I figured I would go with that because you have some difficulty dealing damage to battleships on a ship like this. Main battery range 12.3 kilometers, so AFT actually would put it up to over 14, which is fairly good. You can definitely hit ships at that range. The anti-air is really good on the ship for a destroyer. The numbers just don't tell me anything. Here you can see 1911 on the flak explosion and 8 flak bubbles at range. And then mid-range is this. Maneuverability, 37.8 knots, this is with a speed flag. 620 meter turning circle, 3.2 second rudder shift. So in terms of speed, the ship is okay. Not great, but okay. Now, in maneuverability, she's also okay. And concealment is 6.4 kilometer detectability by sea and 2.3 by air. So the air detectability on this ship is insanely good. But the ship detectability could be better, at least in my opinion. I would say this is one of my biggest complaints with the ship. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I would like to thank the patrons on Patreon. Thank you very much for your continued support, Barbosa, and I hope I'll see you guys next time.